HBO has been around for over 50 years and has produced over 100 original shows in their history as the oldest US-based subscription TV service.
It's not TV.
Well, I never thought of that.
It's HBO.
Oh my God. I am not even gonna touch that one.
Unrestricted by the advertisers that dominate cable, HBO shows gained a reputation for being well-produced and artistically layered, more akin to what you'd see in a movie theater rather than in your living room, hence the name home box office. With their occasionally ballooned budgets and high-quality production, they laid the foundation and basically wrote the guidebook on what we now know as prestige TV. Despite the dawn of streaming services, HBO has kept strong and continued to elevate their original series, acting as shorthand for what audiences accept as premium television. Really, how many times have you heard someone say, that should have been an HBO show? Today, we're counting down HBO's 10 best shows, spanning multiple genres and vibes, in hopes of highlighting just how handily they claim the crown of prestige TV. While we have taken into account popularity, award wins, and plenty of other factors, ultimately, this list just boils down to our personal preference. We've decided to include miniseries as well, but documentaries, reality shows, and other non-scripted stuff is out. That means that no matter how badly I want to put the rehearsal on this list, it just doesn't fit here. Still, there's more than enough stuff to sift through, so let's start from the bottom and work our way to the top as we count down the top 10 HBO shows that crown them king of prestige TV.
Whoa, whoa. Here I come.
Oh.
Here I come.
Oh.
Number 10, The Last of Us. Alright, let's get this one out of the way first. Season 2 was a misfire, but the first season of The Last of Us is an excellent example of what makes HBO shows so good. Of course, the show is an adaptation of the hugely popular PlayStation game, and in that respect, it sticks to the source material pretty closely. Part zombie horror, part weird buddy road trip, and with plenty of shocking moments, this disturbing post-apocalyptic series thrived with its big old budget and helped usher in a new era of video game adaptations in recent years. For those unfamiliar, the show is set in the United States after a worldwide fungal outbreak turns most of humanity into mindless meat sacks and mushroom-faced monstrosities called clickers. We follow Joel Miller, an emotionally ruined ex-smuggler who is tasked with escorting an immune girl named Ellie across multiple states of unprotected wasteland.
Look, I don't know exactly where this hospital is. We don't have to do this.
After all we've been through, it can't be for nothing. We finished what we started.
To this end, The Last of Us excelled in not only doing justice to the game and nailing all of the big moments, but it also opened up the story to a fresh audience and fulfilled its promise. It was bleak, bloody, and it never pulled its punches, giving us unforgettable scenes like the sinkhole bloater and Joel's late-season rampage. In a post-Game of Thrones era for HBO, The Last of Us brought a fresh wave of hype, and it delivered, carried by excellent performances from Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, and several standout supporting characters. Sure, it fell off in the second season, but there's been enough discourse online already, and honestly, I don't need to add to the pile. Plainly put, HBO has a habit of dropping the ball with follow-up seasons, and The Last of Us fell victim to this, but the first season was still solid. It doesn't matter if you're a fan of the original game or just looking for a post-apocalyptic tale with that signature HBO prestige touch, The Last of Us definitely fits the bill. Number 9, Boardwalk Empire. A peak period drama that ran in the early 2010s, Boardwalk Empire is set in Prohibition-era Atlantic City and weaves an intricate and moody tale of big city crime. The show mostly centers around Nucky Thompson, the slimy city treasurer played by Steve Buscemi. Was it Buscemi? Buscemi? Yeah, whatever.
Steve Buscemi.
Fellow members of the City Council, in less than 2 hours, liquor will be declared illegal by decree of the distinguished gentlemen of our nation's Congress.
Based on the nonfiction book by Nelson Johnson and pulling from real-life events, Boardwalk gives us a glimpse at the shady world of bootlegging in the 1920s, ripe with everything you'd expect, including fedora-wearing gangsters, corrupt politicians, and run-ins with the feds. When it comes to stories of crime, there are few as visionary as Martin Scorsese, the cinema auteur who directed movies like Goodfellas, Casino, and The Departed, and wouldn't you know it, that's exactly who helmed the first episode of Boardwalk on a spicy $18 million budget. Funnily enough, $5 million of that went to creating an actual boardwalk, but I'm getting lost in the weeds here. Boardwalk Empire didn't win over 50 Emmy Awards because of a multi-million-dollar piece of waterfront wood. It did so because it was an enthralling 5-season story of crime packed with historical figures, absolutely fantastic acting, and that perfect period piece vibe that is so often imitated, but rarely matched. Number 8, Chernobyl. Speaking of real-life stories drenched in drama, Chernobyl is the first miniseries that we felt compelled to include, and could you blame us? Written and directed by Craig Mazin, who also handled season 1 of The Last of Us, this show centers around the infamous Chernobyl nuclear disaster of 1986, an event shrouded in purposeful shadow despite the fact that it almost destroyed a big chunk of the planet. Told in part from the perspective of Valery Legasov, a nuclear scientist sent to clean up someone else's radioactive mess, we witness the unbelievable neglect, arrogance, and incompetence that led to a nuclear reactor literally exploding and the state-sanctioned cover-up that ensued. With a lot of the other shows on this list, you could just plop down, watch a few episodes, and feel entertained, but Chernobyl isn't like that at all. Instead, this miniseries is extremely depressing, but like a car accident that you can't seem to look away from, each morbid turn pulls you in deeper and deeper.
We get the backup pumps running, we need water moving through the core, that is all that matters.
There is no core. It exploded. The core exploded.
He's in shock. Get him out of here.
Not just confined to the site of the disaster, the show explores the effects of the literal fallout on the surrounding population of Pripyat and the innocent civilians therein, the geopolitical ramifications, and most of all, the horrifying fact that this was an accident of such great magnitude that for a moment there, it threatened the very safety of the entire human race. The show looked incredible, the script was perfect, and the acting was phenomenal, but it's that ever-present feeling of deep-seated dread that made Chernobyl so memorable. Number 7. Westworld. Obviously, HBO is no stranger to shows with big, thought-provoking concepts, and Westworld is a standout in that regard. A modern reboot of the 1973 movie by Michael Crichton, Westworld is a sci-fi series that's all about a Wild West-themed amusement park. Yeah, but where's the sci-fi in that, you say? Well, in Westworld, you don't have to deal with underpaid cast members in goofy costumes. Instead, the park is populated with lifelike androids, indistinguishable from real humans, designed to satisfy and satiate your every need, no matter how twisted they may be. Throughout the show, we follow several characters as they peruse around the park, living out their cowboy fantasies, but of course, something dark and mysterious looms under the surface. Westworld is a story in two parts, one concerning the occupants of the park, and the other about the deranged creators that hid this land from the prying eyes of judgment. In addition to being an appropriately wild western, complete with shootouts and tavern brawls, it's also a cautionary tale about humanity's desire to play God and the consequences of subverting the laws of decency in favor of power.
So I will ask you nicely, please, don't get in my way.
These themes are all wrapped up in a mind-bending mystery created in part by master writer in the genre Jonathan Nolan, who helped create movies like Memento, The Prestige, and Interstellar. Unfortunately, though, Westworld shot for the stars and it ultimately missed, as the show petered out and viewership plummeted over the third and fourth seasons, and it was subsequently canceled as a result. Worse yet, it's been scrubbed from HBO's streaming service, so now the only way to watch it is through good old-fashioned Blu-ray or DVD. Let this be a reminder of the power of physical media, because the first two seasons of Westworld are some of the best sci-fi TV you'll ever see, even if HBO would rather bury their existence. Number 6. Band of Brothers. The second and final miniseries on this list, Band of Brothers was another dramatization of real-life events that gave viewers an intimate look at one of the most disturbing times in all of history, World War II. Created by Steven Spielberg, many see Band of Brothers as a sort of extension of the classic film Saving Private Ryan, accompanied by its dreary but honest tone, memorable heroes, and unwavering portrayal of the horrors of battle.
Each trooper will learn this operation by heart and know his mission to the detail.
We're invading Europe, my friend.
In short, Band of Brothers tracks the mission of Easy Company, a boots-on-the-ground infantry unit of the 101st Airborne Division in the United States Army. Starting with their basic training and progressing through several hellish fights in Axis territory until the war's end, this harrowing trek through history is easily one of HBO's best. At the time of production, Band of Brothers was the most expensive show that HBO had ever made, at roughly $125 million, and it shows in the end product. Though the heart of the show lies in the cast of characters that compose Easy Company, the battle scenes are a terrifying spectacle pushed far beyond the expectations of TV viewers in the early 2000s. Yet, Band of Brothers gives us plenty of time to get to know the characters of Easy Company before it thrusts them into traumatic conflicts like the Battle of the Bulge or the Battle of Carentan, making these sequences all the more nerve-wracking. Over time, Band of Brothers has cemented its spot as not only a bar-setting HBO miniseries, but also one of the best pieces of television ever produced. And 2 decades later, it's still just as poignant as it was in 2001, which is really saying something when you consider that this was an era of TV that was mostly dominated by reality show schlock and lightweight, family-friendly sitcoms. Number 5. Succession. If there's one thing that HBO consistently nails, it's character-driven drama, and Succession is a prime instance of this mastery, giving us an inside look at a particularly nasty set of siblings, all vying for absolute power.
You dragged our reputation through the mud. You're acting out a personal grudge against Dad.
There's a foundational sickness within our father and his company.
Or do you not actually give a f?
Succession is a dark comedy all about the immensely wealthy Roy family, who control the media conglomerate Waystar Royco. Fiercely under the wing of the patriarchy, the family looks to their aging father, Logan Roy, and anticipating his inevitable death, tries to shift the balance in their favor in a bid to control the company. Logan's children, namely Connor, Roman, Kendall, and Shiv, all showcase their insidious selfishness as they constantly screw each other over, leading to countless moments of pitch-black humor.
In which you did not send an email to Mr. Hirsch with the title, "You can't make a tomlet without breaking some Greggs." You sent the same email to him 67 times in one evening.
Succession is what we call a critical darling, because despite all the award wins and rave reviews, the viewership numbers paled in comparison to most other HBO shows, and it even struggled against standard cable sitcoms. And that's honestly a shame, as Succession is wildly entertaining thanks to its sharp and snappy writing, an all-star ensemble cast, and the honest reflection of real-life media families. It's weird because in Succession, almost every character is a complete and total piece of garbage, with some exceptions, and these self-centered, ever-annoying objects of wealth are often irredeemable, but yet we as an audience find a way to empathize. Across 4 seasons, Succession built its story and characters in a meaningful way, and unlike other shows of its ilk, it knew when to call it quits. If you can get past how unlikable the characters are up front, you'll be surprised by just how intriguing and hilarious Succession can be, and like us, you'll likely be left wondering why more people don't watch this show. Number 4, True Detective. Time is a flat circle. I don't sleep, I just dream. This is like someone's memory of a town.
You get any sleep last night?
I don't sleep. I just dream.
Honestly, is there anything better than Rust Cole quotes? Rust, played by Matthew McConaughey, of course, being one of 2 focal detectives in HBO's stellar crime drama, True Detective. Together with his partner Marty, played by Woody Harrelson, they investigate a creepy, cult-like case of murder in the rural south of Louisiana, where each clue plunges them further and further down the rabbit hole.
Like a lot of dreams, there's a monster at the end of it.
Jumping back and forth through time, the first season of True Detective paints a complex story with hefty themes, elevated by career-high performances from everyone involved. The show doesn't just excel in its tense character drama, but also with remarkably good cinematography, with episode 4 in particular containing a one-shot action climax that's undeniably one of television's most gripping sequences. That said, True Detective is an anthology show, and to be blunt, the excellence of the first season constantly overshadows most follow-up seasons. While myself and others weren't wild about the newest 4th season, Season 2 and 3 were still pretty good, and far outweighed the quality of most others in the genre. Season 2 gave us a modern tale of cops on the West Coast, while Season 3 spanned 3 decades in the Ozarks, offering unique tales that stand out on their own. Although separate in this way, they all retain a moody vibe, evocative visuals, and mind-bending mysteries the likes that only True Detective and a few other select shows ever managed to pull off. Season 1 remains an almost flawless 8 episodes of television, and even if that's all that True Detective ever gave us, it would still be more than enough to earn its spot on this list. Number 3, Game of Thrones. Yes, Season 8 was an utter catastrophe, and Game of Thrones definitely has one of the worst endings to a TV show ever, period. I understand. I have half a mind to blame George R.R. Martin for raking in all of his HBO bucks instead of finishing the books, but showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss are just as guilty here. But still, you can't argue with how big of an impact Thrones had on pop culture, and it wasn't just by dumb luck. Over the first couple of seasons, Thrones immersed us in its fantasy world of Westeros and the factions therein, with countless fan-favorite characters, interwoven subplots, and a larger-than-life feeling of encroaching war. Then things got wholly out of control with twists like the Red Wedding, which shook the world at large with its shocking violence and evaporation of plot armor.
Let him go, or I will cut your wife's throat.
I'll find another.
Personally, I couldn't get enough of the weird, more ethereal plot lines like the Faceless Men and Bran's involvement with the Three-Eyed Raven, but that's what makes Game of Thrones shine. It was a show that had a bit of something for all audiences involved. War, romance, crime, politics, so on and so forth, all wrapped up in a beautifully depicted fantasy world. Oh, and the dragons. Actually, I'm not going to rant about the dragons. They're pretty cool. When I think of most HBO shows, I think of Game of Thrones, and you probably do too. It's easily their most watched, most successful, and highest budget show. Let's not pretend here, it commanded pop culture in the 2010s unlike anything else. At that time, there were 2 kinds of people, those who watched Game of Thrones and those who probably made it a point that they did not. There were weekly viewing parties, people modeled their personalities after their favorite house, and it was impossible to go on YouTube without seeing some sort of Game of Thrones reaction video. Still, popularity does not equal quality, but in the case of Game of Thrones, it was warranted. It sucks that it ended the way it did, but honestly, that's kind of why it's not further up on this list. We may not have gotten a fair ending, but within the show, there were so many standout character arcs and self-contained plots that's hard not to look back fondly. Hell, I didn't even mention the battle scenes. When it comes to peak prestige TV, inflated budget and all, Game of Thrones is a stunning example of both the absolute best and worst ways to do it. Number 2, The Sopranos. What is it about Italian mafia stories that make them so good? Seriously, I can't suss it out, but at this point, I guess it's basically accepted fact. And look no further than The Sopranos, which ran from 1999 to 2007, and over its 86 episodes left a lasting mark on audiences and television at large. However, where most mobster movies and shows put an emphasis on violence and action, The Sopranos, in classic HBO fashion, was most revered for its nuanced characters and introspective narrative. At the head of the story is Tony Soprano, the patriarch of the show's namesake family, who leads a life of organized crime in New Jersey and must deal with all the many issues that arise. Tony is a deeply, deeply troubled man. On the surface, he's a cold, stoic mob boss, but in truth, he's a self-loathing, cruelly misguided anti-hero who drowns his excessive mommy problems in too many vices to mention. The show leans into the exploration of his psychology and philosophy through the evolving relationship with his therapist, Jennifer, and it's here that we get to the heart of The Sopranos. It's a story about a conflicted man who we want so badly to make a change for the better, but against the backdrop of a tragic life of crime, we know that it'll be nigh impossible.
So we're gonna deal with this as a family, together, no matter how it affects anybody, personal safety-wise, financially-wise, whatever.
While Tony Soprano and his immediate family are obviously the major draw to the show, they are far from the only good characters. Across 6 excellent seasons, Tony's tale is interwoven with a slew of other all-time greats, like his lifelong right-hand man Silvio, reluctant gangster brother-in-law Bobby, morally irredeemable and unpredictable sort of nephew Christopher, backstabbing rat Sal, whose nickname we're not going to say on YouTube, and many, many more. These characters all battle with their own demons, often dealing with moral conflict and the concept of justice, but this is still a mobster show with life or death stakes, something that The Sopranos never lets you forget for too long. It's also very important to point out just how influential this show was for early 2000s television. Between its unflinching violence, morally gray characters, and high production value, it was basically the first spark of the prestige TV era as we now know it, and has since been credited with kickstarting the second golden age of television. Without The Sopranos, there would be no Breaking Bad, there would be no Narcos, no Mad Men. Hell, we wouldn't have like half of the shows on this list. And we owe it all to you, Tony Soprano, you gabagool-eating sociopath. Number 1, The Wire. While The Sopranos told an introspective story about organized crime, The Wire taps into the soul of one city, Baltimore, told through 5 seasons of impeccable television. Created not by jaded entertainment execs, but instead 2 guys with intimate knowledge of Baltimore crime due to decades of experience within law enforcement and journalism, this show is about as real as it gets. Though heavily involving crime and the police, I wouldn't call The Wire a cop show. Instead, it's a multifaceted drama that examines the many faults of America's institutions, told through the lives of numerous characters, all with their own motivations outside of the grander story.
Nah, man, we done worrying about territory, man, what corner we got, what project. Game ain't about that no more. It's about product.
Omar Little, Jimmy, Stringer, Bubbles, Marlo, Avon, the list is endless. I would also be remiss to not shout out one of my favorite actors, the late Lance Reddick as Lieutenant Cedric Daniels, or the baby-faced Michael B. Jordan as Wallace. These characters and many more make up the backbone of The Wire's unique seasonal progression, which jumps from a focus on drug dealing to Baltimore's dock workers, politicians, school administrators, and journalists. Trust me, it's actually all more interesting than it sounds. Yet, unlike every other show on this list, The Wire never received any accolades. It's an incredible piece of television, so well thought out and poignant with its social commentary that many regard it as art with a capital A. And what did The Wire get for daring to be so progressive and thought-provoking? A whole lot of cricket chirps. Receiving 0 industry awards and lackluster by comparison viewership throughout its entire run, no one really ever talked about The Wire, and it's a miracle that it didn't get canceled. It wasn't as flashy as competing cable shows like 24 and The Shield, which were more traditionally entertaining, but it told a far more important story, one that's extremely true to life and rarely depicted with such honesty. In the decades since, it seems like critics have tried to make up for their initial lack of praise, as countless outlets will quickly call The Wire the best TV show of all time. Now, I'm not sure if I'm willing to go that far, but at the very least, it deserves the top spot here. It might not have dragons, or zombies, or wild western robots, but in reality, all that stuff is kind of just set dressing. HBO renewed faith in television and brought forth the very concept of modern-day prestige TV, and they did so with good writing and characters above all else. And that is no more evident than in The Wire. And that's gonna do it. Thanks for checking out our video on HBO's best prestige TV shows. As always, I'm super eager to hear everyone's thoughts, so what's your guys' favorite HBO show, or do you got a top 3? Drop a comment and let us know. When looking back, it's kind of mind-boggling at just how influential and important these shows have become. Now, if HBO could stop canceling half their good shows and wiping them off streaming services, that'd be great. Anyways, if you guys watched this far, thanks for sticking around to the end, and if you liked the video, share it with a friend or just drop us a like, and feel free to follow our channel for more videos on your favorite entertainment. And you can also support the channel further via YouTube memberships, Patreon, or Buy Me a Coffee. We'll be back soon, but for now, BingeBot is logging off.